My husband hit me in front of his friends and they laughed it off as drama. But when I came home later that night, one of them had left a note under my door. You need to leave before Friday. The slap came during poker night. I'd walked into the garage to ask if anyone wanted more beer, and Dominic told me to shut up. He was in the middle of a hand. Then his palm connected with my cheek hard enough that my vision blurred. The guys went silent for maybe 3 seconds. Then Griffin said something about wives always interrupting at the worst times, and they all laughed. Dominic pulled me onto my lap like nothing happened, kissed my burning cheek, and told me I knew he was just playing. I finished my shift at the pharmacy the next morning on autopilot. My face still hurt. When I got home around 6, I found the note slipped under our apartment door. Plain white paper, block letters, and blue ink. You need to leave before Friday. Nothing else. I checked our door camera. It had been slipped under around 3 in the morning. The camera angle only caught a hand wearing what might have been Griffin's leather bracelet. I saved the footage to my phone, then deleted it from the system. Dominic checked that camera obsessively. I didn't mention it when he came home. We ate dinner in silence. Everything felt normal, which somehow made it worse. That night, I lay awake thinking about the note. Before Friday. That gave me 3 days. On Wednesday, I called in sick. I opened a new bank account across town and transferred $800 from our joint account. I packed a bag and hid it in my trunk. While Dominic was at the gym, I photographed our lease, his pay stubs, our marriage certificate. Thursday morning, I woke up to find Dominic already gone. He'd left a note about working late. I spent the day in a fog at work, watching every car in the parking lot. When my shift ended, I sat in my car for 20 minutes. That's when I saw Griffin's truck across the street. He was watching my car. When our eyes met, he pulled out and drove away. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text asked if I'd gotten his note. I asked why Friday. The response came immediately. Saturday night, they were planning something. He'd heard Dominic and Russell talking about teaching me a lesson, about making sure I never embarrassed Dominic again. Another text. Griffin was parked behind the grocery store on Maple. 5 minutes. I shouldn't have gone, but I drove there anyway. Griffin was leaning against his truck looking exhausted. I asked why he was helping me. He explained that 6 years ago, his sister didn't leave when someone warned her. Her husband put her in the hospital. She still had a metal plate in her skull. Griffin shook his head when I asked what they were planning. He'd only heard pieces. Something about the cabin upstate. About making it look like an accident. Russell kept saying I was getting too mouthy, that Dominic needed to handle his property. Griffin told me I needed to leave tonight. Right now. Don't go home, just drive. His eyes kept darting to the road. I started to worry about what would happen if they found out. He promised they wouldn't, then begged me to go. I drove to a motel 40 minutes outside town and paid cash for 3 nights. I sat on the bed watching the location dot showing where Dominic was. He'd stayed at Russell's house until midnight, then gone home. I waited for him to call or text. Nothing came. At 2 in the morning, I pulled up our bank account. Dominic had withdrawn $4,000 that afternoon. Then I checked our joint credit card. He'd purchased rope, duct tape, and a tarp at the hardware store. The timestamp showed 6:30, right after he'd left his note about working late. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Griffin's message was 2 words. They know. I stared at those words until they blurred. My hand started shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I texted back asking how they knew, but the 3 dots appeared and disappeared for what felt like forever before his response came through. Dominic came home early. Saw your car was gone. Called Russell. They're looking for you now. I grabbed my bag and ran to my car. The parking lot was empty, except for a truck 2 rows over that I hadn't noticed before. Dark blue, windows tinted. I couldn't tell if anyone was inside. My keys fumbled in my hand as I unlocked the door and threw myself into the driver's seat. I locked the doors immediately and started the engine. The truck's headlights came on. I reversed out so fast my tires squealed. The truck pulled forward, blocking my exit. I shifted into drive and went the opposite direction, taking the narrow path between the motel building and the dumpsters. My side mirror clipped the brick wall. The truck couldn't follow, too wide for the gap. I came out on the back street and floored it. In my rearview mirror, I watched the truck reverse and disappear around the building. I took random turns, checking constantly to see if anyone was following. After 20 minutes of driving in circles, I pulled into a 24-hour diner parking lot and sat there with the engine running, trying to think. My phone rang. Dominic. I let it go to voicemail. He called again and again. On the 4th call, I answered, but didn't say anything. Where are you? He said. His voice was calm, which scared me more than if he'd been yelling. I thought about hanging up, but something stopped me. I wanted to hear what he'd say, how he'd try to explain this away. Baby, come home. We need to talk. There was noise in the background, voices I recognized. Russell, and maybe Griffin, though I couldn't be sure. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Whatever you think is happening, you're wrong. I hung up and turned off my phone. Then I pulled the battery out like I'd seen in movies, though I had no idea if that actually did anything. I sat in the diner parking lot until dawn started to break, watching every car that passed. At 6 in the morning, I went inside and ordered coffee. The waitress was maybe 60, with tired eyes and a name tag that said Dolores. She poured my coffee without comment and left me alone in the back booth. I tried to figure out what to do next. Going to the police felt impossible. And say what? My husband's friend warned me about something he overheard, that Dominic bought rope and a tarp. None of it proved anything. I'd seen enough episodes of those crime shows to know how this went. They'd call Dominic. He'd say I was having a mental health crisis. They'd probably send me home with him. I couldn't call my mom. She'd been telling me for 3 years that I'd made a mistake marrying Dominic, that he was controlling and mean and I'd regret it. I'd defended him so many times, cut her off when she pushed too hard. The idea of calling her now and admitting she'd been right made my stomach hurt. My dad had died when I was 19, heart attack at his desk at work. Sometimes I wondered what he would have said about Dominic, if he would have seen through him the way Mom did. Dad had always been good at reading people. He'd worked in sales his whole life and said you learned to spot liars early or you didn't last. I missed him in a way that felt physical sometimes, like a weight pressing on my chest. I had a brother, but we hadn't spoken in 2 years. Not since Dominic had gotten drunk at a family barbecue and said some things that crossed a line. My brother had wanted me to leave then. We'd gotten into a screaming match in my mom's kitchen. He'd called Dominic controlling and toxic. I'd called him jealous and judgmental. We hadn't spoken since. I'd chosen Dominic over my own brother, and now I was sitting in a diner at dawn with nowhere to go. The waitress came back and refilled my coffee. She glanced at my face, at the bruise that was probably visible now in the morning light, but didn't say anything. Just set down a plate of toast I hadn't ordered. On the house, she said. You look like you could use it. I managed to thank her. The toast sat untouched while I tried to form a plan. I had $800 in my new account. The 3 nights at the motel were already paid for, but I couldn't go back there. I had half a tank of gas. My bag had some clothes, my medications, my toothbrush, my work uniform from the pharmacy, a phone charger. Not enough to start over somewhere, but maybe enough to disappear for a while. The diner door opened and a man walked in, tall, wearing a baseball cap pulled low. My heart stopped until he turned and I saw it wasn't anyone I knew, just a construction worker here for breakfast. But the panic that had flooded through me didn't fade. It settled in my bones like something permanent. I left cash on the table and walked out. The morning air was cold and I realized I'd left my jacket at the motel. The good one, the heavy winter coat that had cost me almost $200. I got in my car and just started driving. No destination, just away. For 3 hours I drove in random directions, taking exits without planning, turning down roads I'd never seen. I passed through small towns that looked like they'd been forgotten by time, boarded up storefronts, churches with crumbling steeples, gas stations where the prices were still displayed on those old mechanical signs. I ended up in a town I'd never heard of, the kind of place with one stoplight and a post office that looked like it was from the 1950s. I parked near a library and sat there, trying to decide what came next. That's when I remembered something. 2 years ago, I'd gone to a work training conference in another state. My roommate for the weekend had been a woman named Bethany from our regional office. We'd stayed up late talking, the way you do with strangers you know you'll probably never see again. She'd told me about leaving her ex-husband, about the shelter that had helped her, about how they'd given her resources and connected her with a lawyer who worked for free, about how she'd rebuilt her entire life from nothing, and it had been hard, but worth it. I couldn't remember the name of the shelter, but I remembered it was in the city where the conference had been, about 4 hours from here. I pulled out my phone, then remembered I'd taken the battery out. I put it back in, powered it on just long enough to search for domestic violence resources in that city, then turned it off again immediately. My hands were shaking the whole time, expecting Dominic to somehow know I'd turned it on, to somehow track me through those 30 seconds of connectivity. There were 3 shelters listed. I memorized the address of the closest one, then removed the battery again. I sat in the library parking lot and tried to imagine calling one of those numbers, saying the words out loud. My husband hit me. My husband is planning to hurt me. My husband bought rope and a tarp and I'm scared. The words felt too big, too real. I needed gas, and food, and to figure out how to make $800 last as long as possible. There was a gas station across from the library. I filled my tank and went inside to pay cash. The clerk was young, maybe 20, with earbuds in. He barely looked at me. Just took my money and gave me change and went back to scrolling his phone. I bought a bag of chips and a bottle of water. As I was leaving, I noticed a bulletin board near the door covered in flyers. Someone looking for a lost dog. A church potluck scheduled for Sunday. Rooms for rent. Guitar lessons. Babysitting services. One flyer caught my eye. Cleaning position available. Cash paid daily. No experience necessary. There was a phone number with tabs you could tear off. I took one of the tabs and went back to my car. It was Friday now. The day Griffin had warned me about. Whatever Dominic had been planning for Saturday hadn't happened because I'd left. But that didn't mean I was safe. It just meant the timeline had changed. He was looking for me. Russell was looking for me. Maybe the others too. I drove to the address on the flyer. It was a small cleaning company, the kind that did offices and rental properties. The owner was a woman named Patricia, who looked like she could have been my grandmother. Short gray hair, glasses on a chain, sensible shoes. She asked if I had ID. I showed her my driver's license, hoping she wouldn't look too closely at the address. At the fact that I clearly wasn't from here. She studied it, then studied my face. The bruise was visible. I'd checked in the gas station bathroom mirror, purple and yellow, spreading down to my jaw. Some people might have pretended not to notice. Patricia stared at it directly. I need someone who can start today, she said. I can pay $60 cash for 4 hours of work. You clean 3 rental properties that just had tenants move out. Toilets, floors, windows, everything. Think you can handle that? I told her yes before she finished explaining the job. She handed me cleaning supplies and a list of addresses, said I could use my own car and she'd reimburse me for gas. The properties were all within a few miles of each other. She'd check my work at the end, and if it was good, she'd have more tomorrow. The work was hard, physical, mindless. Exactly what I needed. I scrubbed toilets and mopped floors and wiped down baseboards. My back ached and my hands got raw from the chemicals. But for 4 hours, I didn't think about Dominic or Russell or what might be happening back home. I just focused on getting the soap scum off shower tiles and making sure there were no streaks on the mirrors. Patricia met me at the last property to check my work. She walked through slowly, running her finger along surfaces, checking behind appliances, opening cabinets to make sure I'd cleaned inside. When she came back out, she handed me 3 $20 bills. "You did good work," she said. "Can you come back Monday?" I told her yes. She wrote down her phone number and told me to call Sunday night to confirm. As I was leaving, she stopped me. "That bruise," she said. "It's not my business. But if you need resources, there's a women's shelter about 4 hours north. They helped my niece a few years back. Good people. Discreet." She gave me a meaningful look, then went back to her truck. I sat in my car and counted the money. $60. It wasn't much, but it was something I'd earned myself. Something Dominic hadn't given me or controlled. I added it to the cash I had left and tried to calculate how long I could survive. Food was maybe $30 a week if I was careful. Gas would depend on how much I drove. The motel was the big expense, $45 a night. I couldn't afford that for long. The shelter was 4 hours away. I could drive there now, but what would happen to the cleaning job? Patricia had said Monday. If I disappeared, I'd lose that income. But staying here felt dangerous, even in a town where no one knew me. Dominic was resourceful when he wanted to be. He had friends, connections. Russell worked in security and knew people who could track phones and credit cards. I decided to compromise. I'd find a different motel in a different town, somewhere between here and the shelter. I'd work for Patricia on Monday and save more money. Then I'd decide what came next. It felt like a plan, even if it was barely more than survival. I drove for an hour before I found a motel that looked acceptable. The clerk didn't ask questions when I paid cash for 2 nights. The room was small and smelled like stale cigarettes, but the door locked and the windows had curtains I could close. There was a Bible in the drawer next to the bed, a note card tucked inside with a phone number for a crisis hotline. I wondered how many people had sat in this exact room, desperate and scared and trying to figure out what came next. I sat on the bed and finally let myself cry. Not dramatic sobs like in movies, just quiet tears that wouldn't stop. I cried for the marriage I thought I had, for the person I'd been before I met Dominic, confident and happy and whole, for the fact that my face hurt and I was alone in a motel room scared for my life, for my brother who'd been right and who I'd pushed away, for my dad who wasn't here to help me figure this out, for my mom who I couldn't face yet. When I finally stopped, it was dark outside. I hadn't eaten anything except the chips from the gas station. There was a pizza place across the street. I ordered a small cheese pizza and ate it sitting on the motel bed, watching mindless TV with the sound low, some reality show about people renovating houses. Everyone on screen looked happy and clean and safe. Their problems were things like choosing between granite and quartz countertops. I envied them so much it hurt. My phone was still off. I wondered if Dominic was still calling, if he'd reported me missing, if the police were looking for me or if he was handling this privately. Griffin had said they'd been talking about the cabin, about making it look like an accident. That suggested Dominic didn't want police involved either, which meant what? That he was planning something bad enough that he couldn't risk an investigation? I thought about Griffin, about why he'd helped me. His sister's story had sounded real, the way he'd told it. Flat and sad and specific. But I didn't really know him. He'd been at that poker game. He'd laughed with the others when Dominic hit me. Maybe the warning was part of some game I didn't understand. Maybe this was all a setup and I was walking right into it. But the rope and the tarp were real. I'd seen the credit card statement myself. That wasn't something I could misinterpret or exaggerate. Dominic had bought supplies you'd need to restrain someone, to wrap something up, to clean up after something terrible. I tried to remember when things had gotten bad. Not the hitting, that was new, but the control. It had started small. Dominic wanting to know where I was, getting upset if I didn't text back right away, telling me that certain friends were bad influences, that my mom was manipulative and I should set boundaries, that my brother was jealous of what we had. At first, it had felt like he cared, like he was protecting me. My friends thought it was romantic how attentive he was, how he always wanted to be with me. I'd thought so too. I'd felt special, chosen. He'd pick me up from work even when I had my car there. He'd call during my lunch break just to hear my voice. He'd text me throughout the day, asking what I was doing, who I was with. I thought it meant he loved me. Then it was the way I dressed, the way I talked to other men, even cashiers at the grocery store, the way I spent money, even though I worked full-time and paid half our bills. He'd say I was too sensitive when I got upset, that I was creating drama, that normal couples talked through things and I was making mountains out of molehills, that his ex-girlfriend had been crazy too, always accusing him of things he didn't do. I should have heard that as a warning, but instead I'd worked harder to be different, to be better, to not be crazy like his ex. By the time I realized I was walking on eggshells all the time trying to anticipate his moods and avoid his anger, it felt too late to leave. We were married. We had a lease together. All our finances were tangled up. My car was in both our names. My phone was on his plan. And every time I thought about telling someone what was happening, I'd hear his voice in my head telling me I was overreacting, that I was being dramatic. That no one would believe me anyway because from the outside we looked perfect. The slap during poker night had been a line crossed. Something even he couldn't explain away as me being dramatic. That's why he'd pulled me onto his lap immediately, kissed my cheek, made it seem playful. But the guys had seen. They knew. And apparently Russell had thoughts about what should happen next, about teaching me a lesson, about handling property. I must have fallen asleep because I woke up to sunlight streaming through the gap in the curtains. It was Saturday, the day Dominic had been planning something. I wondered if he'd still gone to the cabin, if Russell and the others had met him there, if they were angry about wasted plans or if they'd just rescheduled, if they were out looking for me right now. I took a shower and changed into clean clothes from my bag. In the bathroom mirror, the bruise looked worse. The purple had spread and darkened. I tried covering it with makeup but didn't have the right products. It just made it look gray and obvious. Like I was trying to hide something, which I guess I was. There was a dollar store next to the pizza place. I walked over and bought concealer, trying to match my skin tone under the harsh fluorescent lights. I also bought a prepaid phone, the cheapest one they had, $29 with a SIM card that came with a small amount of minutes and data. The package said it was untraceable, which I wasn't sure was true, but it made me feel slightly safer. Back in the motel room, I set up the prepaid phone and transferred the important numbers from my real phone. Patricia's number, the shelter's number, my mom's number, though I couldn't imagine calling her yet. I left my real phone off, battery removed, wrapped in a towel in my bag like it might explode. I spent Saturday doing nothing, watching TV, eating vending machine snacks, trying not to think about what might be happening at home. Every time a car pulled into the motel parking lot, my heart raced. But it was always just other guests. People with luggage and kids, normal travelers with normal lives. A family with 2 small children who ran around the parking lot playing tag while their parents unloaded the car. I watched them through the curtain and felt jealous of their ordinariness. Sunday, I called Patricia on the prepaid phone. She answered on the second ring, and I could hear TV in the background, some game show with a laugh track. I told her I could work Monday. She said to meet her at her office at 8 in the morning. I asked if there might be more work during the week. She said possibly, depending on how the rentals went. She sounded pleased that I'd called. Reliable workers were hard to find, she said. After I hung up, I lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. There was a water stain shaped like a cloud, or maybe a dog. I stared at it until my eyes watered. This was my life now. Cheap motels and cleaning jobs, constantly looking over my shoulder. It didn't feel real. It felt like something that was happening to someone else, and I was just watching from a distance. I thought about Dominic, about the man I'd fallen in love with 4 years ago. He'd been charming then, funny, attentive in ways that felt good instead of suffocating. He'd brought me coffee at work as a surprise. Remembered little things I'd mentioned in passing. My friends had been jealous of how romantic he was, how he always had flowers delivered, how he'd plan elaborate date nights. When had that man disappeared? Or had he ever existed at all? Maybe the charm had always been a mask. Maybe I'd just been too naive to see it. Or maybe he changed gradually and I'd changed with him, like a frog in boiling water not noticing the temperature rising until it was too late to jump out. My phone, the prepaid one, rang. I didn't recognize the number. For a moment I considered not answering, but it could have been Patricia calling from a different number or something important. I answered without saying hello, just listened. It was Griffin. "Don't hang up," he said quickly. "Please, I need to tell you something." I almost hung up anyway, but curiosity stopped me. I asked how he got this number. He said he'd called Patricia, told her he was my brother, said there was a family emergency. She'd given him the number I'd called from. My stomach dropped. If Griffin could find me, Dominic could too. I started throwing things in my bag, preparing to run. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely zip the duffel. "Wait," Griffin said. He must have heard me moving. "I'm not going to tell him. I swear. I need to talk to you, to tell you what happened yesterday." I stopped moving but kept my bag on the bed, ready. I asked what happened where. "The cabin," he said. "They went yesterday. Dominic and Russell and 2 other guys. Vince and Coleman, guys from Russell's work. They were planning to bring you there. Russell said they needed to teach you about respect, about loyalty. I don't know exactly what they were going to do, but Dominic kept talking about how you'd understand after, how you'd be different, more manageable." I felt sick. I sat down on the bed because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. The room was spinning slightly. I asked if he was there. "No," Griffin said. "I told them I had to work. I couldn't be part of it. They went without me. Called me a few choice names, but they went. So why are you calling? What do you want?" "Because I need you to know something," he said. "When they got back, Russell was pissed. Said you'd ruined everything by running, that it made you look guilty, that now they had supplies and no use for them. Dominic was calmer about it. Said you'd come back eventually, that you had nowhere to go, that you'd need money, need your job, need to access your stuff, that you'd have to come back and then they'd be ready." I asked if that was supposed to make me feel better. Griffin was quiet for a moment. I could hear traffic in the background. He was outside somewhere. "I'm calling because they're not looking for you anymore," he said. "Not actively. Russell wanted to hire someone to track you down, but Dominic talked him down. Said the best thing was to wait. That you'd need money eventually, need to access your bank account. That the bank was joint so he could see when you used it. He's frozen the account, actually. Put a hold on it so you can't take anything else out. My $800 was in a different account. One he didn't know about. But all my money from the pharmacy, my direct deposits, those went into the joint account. I'd have no access to my own paychecks. How do you know all this? I asked. Russell was bragging about it last night. At Shooter's, that bar on 5th, talking loud about how his friend had a wife who got out of control, how they'd had a plan to fix it, how you'd panicked and run but you'd be back. He was drunk, saying way too much. I recorded some of it on my phone. Why? Griffin sighed. Because my sister didn't have proof. When she finally tried to leave her husband for real, for good, it was her word against his. No one believed her. She didn't have any evidence. If you decide to go to the police, you'll need more than just your story. You'll need documentation, proof, something concrete. I didn't know what to say. Griffin had been at that poker game. He'd laughed when Dominic hit me. He'd stood there with the others and made jokes about dramatic wives. But now he was recording Russell's confessions and warning me about cabins and trying to help. It didn't make sense. I asked him why he was doing this. Really, the truth. He was quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Because I could have warned my sister, he finally said. Her husband's friends knew what he was doing. We all knew. We'd seen the bruises, heard him talk about her like she was nothing, and none of us said anything. We thought it was none of our business. That it was between a husband and wife. She ended up in the hospital with a fractured skull, and I ended up living with the fact that I could have stopped it, that I should have stopped it. There was more silence. Traffic sounds. Someone yelling in the background. Then he asked where I was, if I was safe. I told him I wasn't going to tell him that. He said he understood. He gave me his number and told me to call if I needed anything. Said he could send money if I ran out. Then he offered to email me the recording of Russell at the bar. I gave him an email address I'd just made on the prepaid phone. A random combination of letters and numbers, nothing traceable to me. We hung up. 20 minutes later, the recording appeared in my inbox. I listened to it 3 times, my hands shaking. Russell's voice was slurred but clear enough, talking about Dominic's situation, about the wife who needed an attitude adjustment, about the cabin and the plan. He never said my name, never said Dominic's name, but the context was obvious if you knew what to listen for. He mentioned the poker game, the garage, teaching someone a lesson about interrupting, about respect. It wasn't enough for the police, not on its own, but it was something, more than I'd had before, proof that I wasn't crazy, that this wasn't all in my head. Monday morning, I met Patricia at her office. It was a small building that she shared with an insurance agent. Her space was just one room with a desk, a filing cabinet, and a wall calendar covered in dates and property addresses. She had 4 properties for me to clean. The work took 6 hours. She paid me $90 cash at the end, counting out the bills carefully. I asked if there was more work the rest of the week. She said Tuesday and Friday for sure, maybe Thursday depending on move-outs. I told her I could work any day she needed. She looked at me for a long moment. You got somewhere to stay? She asked. I told her I was in a motel. She asked which one. I hesitated but told her. She nodded like she'd expected that. That place charges too much, she said. I got a property, an efficiency apartment, rents by the week. $300. It's not fancy, but it's clean and safe. You interested? I asked where it was. She gave me an address, said the current tenant was moving out Wednesday. I could see it then and move in Thursday if I wanted. The math worked. If I cleaned 3 days this week, I'd have close to $300. Combined with what I had left, I could afford it. I told her yes. She made a note on her calendar. I found a different motel that night. Cheaper than the last one, which meant creamier, but I needed to stretch my money. The room had a weird smell and the TV barely worked, but the door locked and that's what mattered. I sat on the bed and ate gas station food for dinner. A sandwich that tasted like plastic. Chips. A candy bar that was supposed to be chocolate, but had that waxy texture that meant it was mostly oil. Tuesday and Friday, I cleaned for Patricia. Thursday, she called with 3 more properties, all small jobs that had just needed a deep clean between tenants. By the end of the week, I'd made almost $300. Combined with what I'd saved, I had just over $1,000 cash. It felt like a fortune and nothing at the same time. Wednesday afternoon, Patricia showed me the efficiency apartment. It was in a basement, barely bigger than a storage unit. The ceiling was low enough that a tall person would have to duck. 1 room with a bathroom attached. A sink, a mini fridge, a hot plate. 1 window near the ceiling that looked out at ground level so all you could see was people's feet walking by. But it was clean. The door had a good lock. And Patricia said she owned the building, so if I had any problems, I could call her directly. No landlord to go through. No lease to sign that Dominic could track somehow. Just cash weekly, and I could stay as long as I wanted. I moved in Thursday night. All my possessions fit in 2 trips from my car. A bag of clothes, my toiletries, the cleaning supplies Patricia had given me. That was it. Everything I owned in the world. For the first time since I'd left, I had something resembling stability. It was fragile and temporary and could disappear at any moment, but it was mine. I'd earned it. Dominic didn't know where I was, couldn't control what I did, couldn't tell me I was overreacting or making mountains out of molehills. That first night in the efficiency apartment, I lay on the bed, which was really just a mattress on a metal frame, and stared at the ceiling. I could hear footsteps from the people in the building above, water running through pipes, muffled conversations. City sounds that meant I wasn't completely alone, even though I'd never felt more isolated in my life. I thought about calling my mom, but I still couldn't face it. Couldn't admit that she'd been right and I'd wasted years defending a man who'd hit me and planned worse. Eventually, I'd have to, but not yet. Not while everything was still so raw. Griffin texted the prepaid phone once, just checking if you're okay. I responded that I was. He sent back a thumbs up and didn't message again. I appreciated that he wasn't pushing, wasn't trying to insert himself into my life or play hero. He'd given me information and then backed off. I settled into a routine. Work for Patricia Monday through Thursday. Grocery shopping at discount stores where I could make $20 stretch for a week of food. Cooking simple meals on the hot plate. Pasta with butter. Canned soup. Sandwiches. Nothing that required more than one pot or pan. The efficiency apartment had that small window near the ceiling. Sometimes I'd sit on the floor and watch people's feet walk by on the sidewalk above. Expensive shoes, cheap shoes, sneakers, heels. Each pair of feet represented a person with their own life, their own problems. I wondered if any of them were running from something too. If any of them had left everything behind and were starting over in a basement apartment with $1,000 and a cleaning job. 3 weeks after I'd left, I was cleaning a rental property when my prepaid phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But it could have been Patricia calling from a different phone or a potential tenant with a question. I answered. It was my mom. Before I could ask how she got this number, she started talking. Dominic called me, she said. He said you've been missing for 3 weeks. That you had some kind of breakdown and disappeared. He wanted to know if I'd heard from you. He was crying, actually crying, talking about how worried he was, how he just wanted to know you were safe. I sat down on the floor of the bathroom I'd been scrubbing. My hands were shaking. The rubber gloves were still on. I asked what she told him. Nothing, she said. I told him if you wanted to talk to him, you would. Then I hung up. But honey, what's going on? Are you safe? Please tell me you're safe. The kindness in her voice broke something open. I started crying, still sitting on the bathroom floor with my rubber gloves on and chemical cleaner fumes making my eyes water. I told her everything. The poker game, the slap, the note from Griffin, the rope and tarp, running, the motels, Patricia, the efficiency apartment. All of it came spilling out in one long, run-on sentence. She listened without interrupting. When I finally stopped talking, she was quiet for a moment. I could hear her breathing. Could picture her standing in her kitchen, probably at the counter where the phone was plugged into the wall because she refused to use a cell phone. Where are you? She asked. I'll come get you right now. You can stay with me. We'll figure this out together. I told her I couldn't tell her that. Not yet. That I needed to figure some things out first. She asked if I had money, if I was eating, if I was safe, if I was warm at night. All the mom questions that made me cry harder. I told her yes to all of it, even though the first two weren't completely true. I wasn't eating enough. The money was running out faster than I'd expected. But I was safe, and I was warm, and I was away from Dominic, and that had to be enough for now. She made me promise to call her once a week, to let her know I was alive. She gave me her cell phone number, which she'd apparently gotten finally, just for this. So I could text her too. Before we hung up, she said one more thing. I'm proud of you for leaving. I know that doesn't help right now. I know you're scared and alone and probably think I'm going to say I told you so. But I'm not. I'm just proud. You did the right thing, the hard thing, and I love you. After the call, I sat on that bathroom floor for a long time. Then I finished cleaning the property and moved on to the next one. Patricia checked my work at the end of the day and said it was some of my best. I didn't tell her I'd spent 20 minutes crying in a bathroom, just took my cash and went home to my basement apartment. A week later, Patricia asked if I'd be interested in managing properties for her. She was getting older and wanted to slow down. The management would mean more money but also more responsibility. Dealing with tenants and contractors, doing showings for potential renters, handling paperwork and repairs, collecting rent. All the administrative work she was tired of doing. I told her I'd think about it. That night in my efficiency apartment, I pulled out my real phone for the first time in weeks. I powered it on, expecting it to be dead, but it still had a small charge. Immediately, it started buzzing with notifications, texts and missed calls and voicemails. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Most from Dominic, some from numbers I didn't recognize. A few from coworkers at the pharmacy asking if I was okay. One from my manager saying my job was still available if I came back within 30 days, but after that they'd have to hire someone else. I didn't read or listen to any of the messages from Dominic. I went straight to settings and changed my passwords. Email, bank accounts, everything. Then I blocked Dominic's number. It felt significant, like I was making a choice instead of just reacting, taking control of something even if it was small. There was one voicemail from my brother. I almost deleted it without listening, but curiosity got the better of me. I played it. His voice was hesitant. Hey, it's me. Mom told me what happened. I'm not going to say I told you so. I just want you to know if you need anything, I'm here. Money? A place to stay? Someone to talk to? Whatever. Call me if you want. Or don't. Just know the option's there. I saved the voicemail. Didn't call back yet, but didn't delete it either. It felt like a door opening slightly. Not enough to walk through, but enough to see light on the other side. I told Patricia yes about the management position. She seemed relieved. We spent the next 2 weeks with her training me on everything. How to screen tenants, how to handle maintenance requests, which contractors were reliable and which ones charged too much, how to deal with people who didn't pay rent on time, how to document everything in case there were ever legal issues. By the end of it, I was handling 3 properties on my own, showing apartments to potential tenants, collecting rent, coordinating repairs. Patricia paid me $400 a week, which felt like more money than I'd seen in my life. I paid my weekly rent to Patricia and still had money left over. Started saving again, bought better food at the grocery store, got my hair cut for the first time in months. It had been 2 months since I'd left. The bruise was long gone, though sometimes I'd touch my cheek and swear I could still feel it. Like the pain had left a mark deeper than skin. I'd gained back some of the weight I'd lost from stress and irregular eating. My efficiency apartment felt less like hiding and more like living, but I still looked over my shoulder constantly, still felt my heart race when cars slowed down near me, still dreamed about the cabin and woke up in cold sweats wondering what would have happened if I'd stayed. If Griffin hadn't left that note, if I hadn't been brave enough to run. Griffin sent another text in early November. Thought you should know. Dominic moved, packed up your apartment and left town. New job in another state according to Russell. Phoenix, maybe. Or Tucson. Somewhere in Arizona. Looks like he's moving on. I didn't know how to feel about that. Relief, mostly. But also something else. Anger that he could just leave. Start over somewhere new. Get a fresh start. While I was scrubbing toilets and living in a basement and jumping at shadows, while I had nightmares and panic attacks and couldn't trust anyone, I asked Griffin if he knew where in Arizona. He said Russell wasn't clear on the details. Just somewhere south. Hot. Far from here. That Dominic had told people we'd separated and I'd moved back in with family. That he was ready for a fresh start. Finding himself. All the cliches people use when they want to rewrite history. That night I called my mom. Told her about Dominic leaving. She asked if I was going to come home now. Back to my hometown. Back to familiar places and people who knew me. I realized I didn't know where home was anymore. The apartment I'd shared with Dominic was gone. Emptied out. Probably rented to someone else by now. My childhood home was where my mom lived. But I was 31 years old. That wasn't home either. Not really. Maybe this efficiency apartment in a town I'd never heard of 3 months ago was home now. Or maybe nowhere was home. Maybe home was something I'd have to build from scratch, piece by piece, day by day. I told my mom I'd visit soon, but I wasn't ready to move back. She said she understood, though I could hear the disappointment in her voice, the worry. She wanted me close where she could see me, make sure I was eating enough, make sure I was safe, but I needed to do this on my own. Needed to prove to myself that I could survive without anyone else. Patricia offered me a partnership in December. She wanted to semi-retire and I'd proven myself capable. We'd split the business 60-40 in her favor until I could buy her out completely. It would take years, maybe a decade, but it was an opportunity, a real one, a future that didn't involve Dominic or running or hiding. I said yes. We drew up papers with a lawyer Patricia knew, a woman who'd handled all of Patricia's business stuff for 20 years. The lawyer asked me questions about assets and liabilities and things I barely understood. Patricia walked me through everything, explained what each clause meant, made sure I understood what I was signing. I signed my name on the documents and felt something shift. This was a future. Not the future I'd imagined when I was younger. Not the white picket fence and kids and happy marriage I'd thought I'd have, but a real tangible future nonetheless. Something solid I could build on. 6 months after I'd left, I moved into a real apartment. 1 bedroom above ground with windows that let in actual light. I could see the sky, could see trees, could see birds flying by. I bought furniture from thrift stores. A couch that was slightly worn but comfortable. A kitchen table with mismatched chairs. Dishes that didn't all match but served their purpose. I learned to cook more than hot plate meals. Tried recipes I found online. Burned things and learned from it. Got better gradually. I adopted a cat from the shelter. A scraggly orange thing that had been there for 8 months because it was mean to everyone. It hissed at the workers. Scratched anyone who tried to pet it. The shelter was talking about euthanizing it because no one wanted it. I took it home. Named it Phoenix because that felt appropriate. It liked me for some reason. Slept on my bed. Sat in my lap while I watched TV. Only scratched me once, and that was because I'd accidentally stepped on its tail. My brother came to visit in January. We spent a weekend together not talking about Dominic or the years we'd been estranged. Just existing in the same space again. He brought pizza and beer. We watched football even though neither of us really cared about football. He told me about his job, his girlfriend, his life. I told him about the properties I was managing, about Patricia, about Phoenix the cat. Before he left, he hugged me and told me I seemed stronger. Different. I wasn't sure if that was true, but I didn't feel as breakable as I used to. Didn't feel like I might shatter at any moment. He gave me his new phone number. Said to call any time. That he'd drive up whenever I needed him. No questions asked. A year after I'd left, Griffin sent one final text. I blocked Russell. Blocked Dominic's new number that I got through mutual friends. Blocked everyone from that time. I'm done with all of them. Just wanted you to know you don't have to worry about me passing information or them finding out about you from me. You're completely off their radar. I hope you're doing okay. Hope you're safe and happy. I thanked him. Told him I appreciated everything he'd done. That warning me had probably saved my life. He responded that he was glad. That his sister was doing better too. Had moved across the country and was in therapy and had met someone who treated her right. That we'd both made it out. Then I deleted his number. That chapter was closed. Door shut. Lock turned. Patricia retired fully 2 years after I'd started working for her. She was 72 and tired. Wanted to travel with her husband while they were both still healthy enough. I bought her out using a small business loan from a credit union that specialized in helping women start businesses. The property management company was mine now. I hired 2 people to help with cleaning and maintenance. We had 12 properties under management and were actively looking for more. I'd built something. Not from scratch exactly, because Patricia had started it. But I'd taken what she'd given me and made it grow. Made it mine. Put my name on business cards and tax forms and bank accounts. Became someone new. Someone capable. someone who could handle problems and make decisions and run a business. 3 years after I'd left, I finally filed for divorce. I'd put it off for complicated reasons: fear that it would put me back on Dominic's radar, uncertainty about whether I needed a lawyer, the cost of legal fees. But mostly, I'd been frozen, unable to take that final step, hoping maybe if I just waited long enough, it would magically resolve itself somehow. My brother connected me with a lawyer he knew who specialized in domestic violence cases. A woman named Victoria who'd been doing this work for 20 years. She took my case without requiring a retainer, said we'd work out payment once everything was settled. She handled everything, filed the paperwork, dealt with serving Dominic in Arizona, navigated the legal system that seemed designed to be as complicated as possible. Dominic didn't contest it, signed the papers and sent them back within a week. According to Victoria, he'd remarried already, had moved on completely. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning in March. I was cleaning out a garage at one of the rental properties when Victoria called to tell me. I sat in my truck afterward, surrounded by trash bags and old furniture that tenants had left behind, and tried to feel something significant: relief or sadness or anger or closure. But mostly I just felt tired. Tired of thinking about Dominic. Tired of letting him take up space in my head. Tired of defining myself by what had happened instead of what was happening now. That night I met my mom for dinner. She'd been visiting monthly since I'd moved into the real apartment. We'd rebuilt our relationship slowly, carefully. She didn't say I told you so, even though she could have. She just showed up, brought groceries when I was short on money, helped me paint my apartment, sat with me when I had bad days and couldn't stop crying for no reason. Over dinner, she asked what I was going to do now. I told her I didn't know. Keep working, keep building the business, maybe travel someday when I had enough money saved. She said that sounded nice, said she was proud of me, said it more often than I could count. Like she was trying to make up for all the times I'd needed to hear it and hadn't. Before we left the restaurant, she handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $5,000. I tried to give it back, but she refused. Wouldn't even take it back to hold it for me. It's from the money your dad left you, she said. I've been holding it in a separate account, waiting for the right time. This feels like the right time. Use it for whatever you need. Down payment on a house, business expenses, emergency fund, whatever. I used the money for a down payment on a small house. 2 bedrooms, a yard for Phoenix, a kitchen with a real stove and real counter space. It needed work. The bathroom tiles were cracked. The carpet was stained and old. The back door didn't close properly, but it was mine. No one else's name on the mortgage. No one who could take it away or use it against me. I spent weekends fixing things. Learned to grout tile from YouTube videos. Replaced the carpet with cheap laminate flooring I installed myself. Fixed the door with help from one of my contractors who took pity on me when he saw how badly I was measuring things. Painted every room. Chose colors I liked without worrying about what anyone else thought. 4 years after I'd left, I was sitting on my back porch watching the sunset when I thought about Dominic for the first time in months. Not with fear or anger, just a distant curiosity about who he was now. If he'd changed, if his new wife was safe, if he'd learned anything, or if he was doing the same things to someone else. I hoped she was safe, but I also knew that hope probably wasn't enough. Statistics said men like Dominic didn't change, that abuse followed patterns, that his new wife was probably walking on eggshells too, probably making excuses for him, probably defending him to friends who were concerned, probably heading toward her own breaking point. 5 years after I'd left, I hired a woman who reminded me of myself. She was quiet, skittish, had a bruise on her wrist she tried to hide with bracelets, long sleeves in summer, excuses about being clumsy. I didn't ask questions, just gave her a job, paid her cash, told her she could use my address for mail if she needed somewhere safe to receive things. She looked at me for a long moment when I said that, like she was trying to decide if she could trust me. A month later, she asked if I knew any places to rent cheap. I told her about the efficiency apartment, how it had saved me once, how Patricia had given me a chance when I needed it most, how sometimes you had to start in a basement before you could make it above ground. She moved in the following week. I didn't pry into her situation, but I made sure she knew my door was open if she needed anything. I overpaid her slightly, gave her extra hours when I could, taught her how to manage properties so she'd have skills beyond cleaning. She was good at it. Detail-oriented, responsible, showed up on time every day like the job mattered, because it probably did. That's when I understood why Griffin had helped me, why he'd risked Dominic finding out. It wasn't about fixing his mistake with his sister. It was about breaking a cycle, about being the person who saw something and said something instead of looking away, about doing the right thing even when it was hard or dangerous or could blow back on you. 6 years after I'd left, my business had 20 properties under management. I'd hired 4 employees. I'd paid off my truck and half my mortgage. I'd learned to sleep through the night without waking up in panic. I'd stopped checking over my shoulder every time a car slowed down, stopped jumping when someone came up behind me unexpectedly, stopped flinching when people raised their voices or moved too quickly. My mom asked if I'd ever date again. I told her maybe someday, but I wasn't looking. Wasn't interested in giving someone that kind of access to my life again. She said she understood, though I could tell she worried I'd be alone forever, that I'd let what happened with Dominic ruin me for any future relationship. But I wasn't alone. I had my business, my employees, Phoenix the cat who was fat now and spoiled, my mom and brother who I saw regularly, the woman in the efficiency apartment who sometimes texted me pictures of meals she'd cooked, proud of learning to feed herself. I had community even if I didn't have romance. Had purpose even if I didn't have partnership. 7 years after I'd left, I got a message on social media from a name I didn't recognize. The message was simple. I heard about your property management company, about how you help women who need a fresh start. I need help. Can we talk? I'm scared. I don't know what else to do. I looked at the profile. It was Dominic's new wife, the woman he'd married right after our divorce. Her profile picture showed a smiling woman with long dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Professional looking. The kind of woman who appeared put together from the outside. In other photos, I could see signs. Long sleeves in summer. Sunglasses indoors. Careful positioning in group photos that suggested she was hiding something. Standing slightly behind Dominic with his hand gripping her shoulder in a way that looked protective to anyone who didn't know better. I stared at that message for a long time. My hands were shaking. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to pretend I hadn't seen it, to keep Dominic in my past where he belonged. But I remembered being in that bathroom at work, Googling domestic violence shelters, too scared to make the call. I remembered Griffin's note under my door. I remembered Patricia giving me a job and an apartment. I remembered all the people who'd helped me when they didn't have to. I responded, told her yes. We could talk. Gave her my phone number. Said to call anytime, day or night. She called 3 hours later while I was doing paperwork in my home office. Her voice was soft, uncertain, like she was afraid someone might be listening. We met 2 days later at a coffee shop 2 towns over. She was younger than me, maybe 28. Pretty in a way that looked fragile, like she might break if you looked at her too hard. She had a scarf wrapped around her neck despite the warm weather. When she reached for her coffee, I saw bruises on her wrist. Purple and yellow, recent. She didn't waste time. She told me she'd found divorce papers while Dominic was at work. My name was on them. She'd looked me up, found my business website, read between the lines of my carefully worded descriptions about providing fresh starts and second chances to women who needed them. She'd put together what the website didn't say outright. I need to leave, she said, but I don't know how. He controls everything. My money, my phone, my car is in his name. Where I go, what I wear, who I talk to. I don't have anyone. He made me cut off my family, said they were toxic and I needed boundaries. I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm going crazy. Like maybe I am the problem and he's right and I'm overreacting about everything. I listened while she talked. Her story was different in details but the same in shape. The charm at first, how romantic he'd been, how attentive, the slow tightening of control that felt like love until it didn't. The isolation from friends and family that happened so gradually she didn't notice until it was done. The fear that grew and grew until it took up all the space in her chest. She hadn't been hit yet. Well, he'd shoved her a few times, pushed her into walls when he was angry, grabbed her arms hard enough to bruise, but he hadn't hit her with a closed fist. Hadn't slapped her across the face in front of witnesses. But she knew it was coming, could feel it building. The way he looked at her when she said the wrong thing. The tension in his shoulders when she asked questions. The way his friends talked about wives needing to be put in their place. The same way Russell and the others had talked at that poker game 7 years ago. I told her about Griffin's note. About the rope and tarp. About the cabin I'd never seen but that still haunted my nightmares. About running with $800 and not knowing where I'd end up. I told her she was right to trust her instincts. That it would get worse. That it always got worse. That the shoving would turn into hitting, that the hitting would turn into worse, that the statistics on women who stayed were not in her favor. Then I told her about Patricia, about the efficiency apartment, about building a life from almost nothing and a determination not to go back, about how hard it was but how possible it was, about how she could do it too if she wanted to, if she was ready. I gave her my number again even though she already had it, told her to call when she was ready. 2 weeks later, she called, said Dominic was going out of town for work, a conference in Nevada, 4 days. She needed to leave while he was gone. Before he got back, before he could stop her. I drove 3 hours to Phoenix to meet her, helped her pack one bag, while her hands shook so badly she could barely hold anything. I had to zip it for her. We took only things that wouldn't be missed immediately. Clothes from the back of her closet, toiletries from under the sink, her birth certificate and social security card that she'd hidden in a book. We left everything else, her jewelry, her laptop, her phone, all of it traceable. All of it ways Dominic could find her. I drove her back to my town through the night. She cried most of the way. Quiet tears that she tried to wipe away before I could notice. I didn't say anything, just drove and let her process what she'd done, what she'd left behind, what came next. I set her up in the efficiency apartment that had been empty since the last woman had saved enough to move out. It looked the same as it had when I'd lived there. Same low ceiling, same small window showing feet walking by, same bathroom barely big enough to turn around in, but it had a lock on the door, and that's what mattered. I gave her a job, paid her cash, helped her open a bank account Dominic couldn't track, taught her how to clean rental properties and how to talk to tenants and how to handle maintenance requests, taught her how to stand up straight after years of making herself small, how to make decisions without second-guessing herself, how to exist without constantly checking over her shoulder. She asked me once if I was scared. If I worried Dominic would find out I'd helped her. I told her yes. I was terrified, but I was more scared of what would happen if no one helped her, of what would happen if she stayed, of reading about her in the news someday. Another woman who'd asked for help and no one had listened. That night, I double-checked all my locks, made sure my alarm was set, texted my brother where I'd be the next day just in case. Told him if he didn't hear from me by 6 p.m. to call the police. Old habits. Old fears. They never completely went away. Probably never would. But neither did the strength I'd built. The knowledge that I'd survived. That I'd taken one note under a door and turned it into a life, into a business, into something real and solid. That I'd helped 2 other women do the same. Maybe more in the future. Maybe I'd keep doing this as long as women needed help leaving. 8 years after I'd left, I was still here. Still running my business. Still helping women who needed a fresh start. Still looking over my shoulder sometimes. Still waking up from nightmares about cabins and rope and things that almost happened but didn't. But I was here. And Dominic was wherever he was. And the distance between us had become its own kind of freedom. Not perfect. Not healed. Not without scars and fears and damage that might never fully repair. But real. And mine. And enough.